June 4th, 1942. Central Pacific Ocean, nearly 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. There are moments in war where a single decision, made within minutes, can change the fate of nations. This was one of those mornings. As dawn breaks over the Pacific, the rising sun reveals nothing unusual, just endless blue water and a thin ring of coral barely visible against the horizon. Midway Atoll looks insignificant, easy to miss, easy to underestimate. But what happens here today will decide whether the United States survives the Pacific War or loses it. The air is heavy with salt. Heat is already building. The distant hum of aircraft engines drifts across the water, growing louder by the minute. On Midway's narrow airstrip, American pilots move quickly between their planes. Faces tight, voices low, eyes fixed on the sky. Most of them understand exactly what this morning could bring. Some have slept only minutes, others not at all. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States is still bleeding, still rebuilding. But today, for the first time, it is not waiting to be hit. Far beyond the horizon, unseen and confident, the Imperial Japanese Navy advances. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of Japan's combined fleet, believes this operation will decide the Pacific War. His plan is precise, complex, and ruthless. By attacking Midway, he intends to draw out America's remaining aircraft carriers and destroy them in a single decisive battle. Once that happens, Japan will dominate the Pacific. The United States, Yamamoto believes, will have no choice but to negotiate. The Japanese fleet is massive. 4 frontline aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, cut through the water in perfect formation. These are the same carriers that struck Pearl Harbor. Their decks are crowded with veteran pilots, elite crews, and aircraft maintained to perfection. Morale is high. Confidence is absolute. They believe the Americans are unaware. They are wrong. Hundreds of miles away, hidden beneath layers of cloud cover, 3 American aircraft carriers wait in silence. USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown, the last one hastily repaired after being badly damaged weeks earlier in the Battle of the Coral Sea. Japanese intelligence believes Yorktown is sunk. It is not. Aboard USS Enterprise, Admiral Raymond Spruance stands on the bridge, calm but fully aware of the stakes. He knows his carriers are outnumbered. He knows many of his pilots are inexperienced. He knows that if this battle is lost, Hawaii itself could be next. What gives him confidence is something invisible: information. In the months leading up to this morning, American codebreakers at Station HYPO in Hawaii, led by Commander Joseph Rockefort, have cracked critical parts of Japan's naval code. Through careful analysis, deception, and patience, they identify a mysterious target referred to as AF. To confirm it, Midway is ordered to transmit a fake message about a water shortage. Japanese intercepts soon report that AF is low on water. The trap is confirmed. Now, instead of reacting to a surprise attack, the United States is setting one of its own. At 4:30 a.m., Japanese aircraft begin launching toward Midway. Engines roar to life as bombers and fighters rise from carrier decks, climbing into the sky. Their mission is simple: destroy Midway's defenses before the American fleet can interfere. On the island, radar operators detect incoming aircraft. Sirens scream. Pilots sprint for their planes. Anti-aircraft guns swing into position. Within minutes, the sky erupts, explosions trace of fire, smoke rolling across the runways. American aircraft take off anyway. They are slow. Many are outdated. Some are barely suited for modern combat. But they go, knowing the odds. As Japanese planes strike Midway, American commanders make their move. Spruance give the order. All available aircraft are launched toward the Japanese fleet, without perfect coordination, without a single unified strike, but with urgency overriding caution. This decision will cost lives. Squadrons become separated. Torpedo planes fly low and slow, expose to enemy fighters and anti-aircraft fire. One by one, they are cut down. Entire units are nearly wiped out. Pilots die without ever seeing the enemy carriers they were sent to destroy. From the Japanese perspective, the battle still appears under control. Midway is damaged. American attacks seem chaotic and ineffective. Their carriers continue operations, preparing a second strike. But beneath that confidence, cracks are already forming. Because while Japanese fighters are focused on killing torpedo planes at low altitude, something else is happening high above the clouds, unseen, unnoticed, and perfectly timed. And in the next moments, the entire war will pivot on what happens next. High above the Pacific, scattered American squadrons push forward through broken cloud layers, flying toward a target they have not yet seen. Navigation is uncertain. Fuel is limited. Radios crackle with fragments of orders, many of them incomplete. There is no second chance. If they turn back now, the Japanese carriers will survive the day. The first to arrive are the torpedo squadrons. At barely 120 knots, flying just above the waves, the planes are painfully slow. Most are Douglas TBD Devastators, already obsolete in 1942. Their crews know it. They know their aircraft lack speed, armor, and defensive firepower. They also know that to launch a torpedo, they must fly straight and level, making themselves perfect targets. Leading one of these squadrons is Lieutenant Commander John Waldron of Torpedo Squadron 8, launched from USS Hornet. Waldron realizes something is wrong almost immediately. The main strike group has flown off on a different heading. Waldron makes a decision that will define his legacy. He turns his squadron south. There is no escort, no fighters above them, just 15 torpedo planes heading alone into the heart of the Japanese fleet. When they finally spot the carriers, Japanese Zero fighters dive instantly. The sky erupts with gunfire. One by one, American planes burst into flames or slam into the sea. Pilots press on anyway, skimming the waves, engines shaking, torpedoes armed. They never reach launch range. Of the 15 planes in Torpedo Squadron 8, only one survives. Ensign George Gay, wounded, pulls himself from the wreckage and floats in the water, watching the battle unfold around him. From the ocean surface, he will witness what comes next. Other torpedo squadrons follow. Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise and Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown. They suffer the same fate. Courage is not enough. Skill is not enough. The Japanese fighters tear them apart. From the decks of the Japanese carriers, officers watch the attacks with growing confidence. American coordination seems poor. Their planes are being destroyed in waves. The threat appears manageable, but there is a cost to this apparent success. To destroy the torpedo planes, Japanese fighters are pulled downward, chasing targets close to the sea. Combat air patrols lose their altitude advantage. Defensive formations stretch thin. Ammunition runs low. Pilots grow exhausted. And while all eyes focus downward, the skies above are slowly being emptied. Below deck on the carriers Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, chaos builds. Aircraft that have returned from the Midway strike are being refueled and rearmed. Bombs are stacked in hangars. Fuel lines snake across the decks. Crews rush to prepare a second wave, unsure whether to strike Midway again or redirect against American carriers. Orders change, then change again. Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, commanding the carrier force, hesitates. Reports are confusing. An American fleet may be nearby or may not. He delays launch, then reverses course, rearming planes yet again. This indecision is fatal. Because while Japanese decks fill with fueled aircraft and unsecured munitions, American dive bombers, lost, low on fuel, and searching desperately, finally find what they are looking for. At high altitude, 3 squadrons emerge almost simultaneously. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, flying from USS Enterprise, has gambled everything on a single assumption, following a lone Japanese destroyer racing north at full speed. It leads him straight to the carriers. At 10:20 a.m., the clouds break. What the American pilots see below is staggering. For Japanese aircraft carriers sailing in tight formation, decks crowded with planes, smoke from Midway still drifting in the distance. For a brief moment, time seems to slow. Then the dive begins. American planes roll onto their backs and plunge almost vertically toward the carriers. Sirens scream aboard Japanese ships. Anti-aircraft guns open fire. Trace a round streak upward, but it is too late. The sacrifice of the torpedo squadrons has cleared the path. And in the next 5 minutes, the Imperial Japanese Navy will suffer a blow from which it will never fully recover. At 10:20 a.m., the sky above the Japanese fleet fills with falling aircraft. From more than 15,000 feet, American SBD dauntless dive bombers scream downward, engines howling as pilots fight gravity, speed, and fear. The ocean rushes up to meet them. Anti-aircraft fire explodes around their wings. Black bursts of flak punch holes through the air, but the formations hold. On the carrier Kaga, deck crews look up in horror. Planes are still being moved. Bombs lie exposed. Fuel hoses remain connected. There is no time to clear the decks. Lieutenant Clarence Dusty Kleiss lines up his target. The carrier fills his gun sight. He releases his bomb at barely 1,500 feet and pulls hard, blacking out as his aircraft tears away. Seconds later, the bomb punches through Kaga's flight deck and detonates deep inside the hangar. The explosion is catastrophic. Fuel ignites instantly. Armed aircraft detonate where they sit. Fire races through the carrier's interior, ripping through bulkheads and corridors. Within moments, Kaga is a burning wreck. Nearby Akagi, Admiral Nagumo's flagship, tries desperately to evade. Her captain orders hard turns, but the ship is slow to respond. A single bomb strikes near the midship elevator, but it is enough. The blast ignites fuel vapors and torpedoes stored below deck. Fire spreads faster than it can be controlled. Nagumo is forced to abandon the bridge. On Soryu, the situation is no better. Multiple bombs slam into the deck in quick succession. Explosions tear through the carrier, throwing aircraft into the sea and killing crews instantly. Flames climb high enough to be seen miles away. In less than 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 frontline aircraft carriers are mortally wounded. From the water below, Ensign George Gay, clinging to his life raft, watches in disbelief. The carriers that had destroyed Pearl Harbor are burning. Thick columns of smoke twist into the sky. He realizes, even then, that he is witnessing history being rewritten. The shock aboard the Japanese fleet is total. Communications break down. Orders conflict. Damage control teams fight fires that cannot be contained. Aircraft that should have been airborne lie twisted and burning. Elite pilots, years of training, experience, and combat knowledge, are lost in moments. Only one carrier remains operational. Hiryu, her commander, Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, refuses to retreat. He understands the gravity of the situation immediately. If Hiryu can strike back quickly, if American carriers can be found and destroyed, the balance might still be restored. Within hours, Hiryu launches 2 counterattacks. Japanese dive bombers locate USS Yorktown, already weakened from the Coral Sea battle. Bombs slam into her deck. Fires erupt. The ship slows, listing heavily. For a moment, it appears Yorktown is finished. But American damage control crews perform what many consider a miracle. Within an hour, Yorktown is back underway. When Japanese torpedo planes arrive later that afternoon, they attack again. This time, their torpedoes strike true. Yorktown finally loses power and is abandoned. From the Japanese perspective, it looks like success. They believe they have sunk 2 American carriers. They are wrong again. Enterprise and Hornet are still operational, and they are already searching for Hiryu. Late in the afternoon, American dive bombers find their final target. Hiryu is still launching aircraft when the attack begins. Bombs crash through her deck, igniting fires identical to those that destroyed her sister ships. By nightfall, Hiryu is burning uncontrollably. Admiral Yamaguchi chooses to go down with his ship. As darkness falls over the Pacific, the scale of the disaster becomes clear. Japan has lost 4 aircraft carriers, hundreds of aircraft, and many of its most skilled pilots. The core of a defensive naval power has been annihilated in a single day. For the United States, the cost has been heavy. Yorktown lost hundreds of aircrew killed, but the strategic victory is undeniable. The balance of the Pacific War has shifted. What began as a desperate gamble has become a decisive turning point. But the consequences of this day will reach far beyond the burning wrecks left drifting in the ocean. As night settles over the Pacific on June 4th, 1942, the ocean is littered with burning debris. Oil slicks glow orange under moonlight. Wreckage drifts silently where some of the most powerful warships in the world once ruled the sea. The battle is not yet officially over, but its outcome is already sealed. For the Imperial Japanese Navy, the shock is profound. In less than 24 hours, Japan has lost 4 frontline aircraft carriers, the heart of its striking power. These were not just ships. They were symbols of Japanese dominance. Carefully trained crews, elite pilots, and years of naval doctrine built around carrier warfare. Unlike the United States, Japan cannot replace these losses quickly. Its industrial base is limited. Its pilot training pipeline is long and unforgiving. Each carrier lost at Midway takes with it something irreplaceable: experience. As dawn breaks on June 5th, Japanese commanders attempt to regroup. Admiral Yamamoto considers a counterstrike, but the reality becomes clear. His fleet is scattered. Communications are damaged. Fuel and aircraft are depleted. The American carriers remain active and dangerous. Reluctantly, Yamamoto orders a retreat. For the first time since the start of the war, Japan is pulling back, not because of strategy, but because it has no other choice. On the American side, the mood is cautious but electric. Aboard USS Enterprise, exhausted pilots return to their ships, many learning only hours later how close the battle truly was. Damage control crews work through the night. Medics tend to wounded airmen pulled from the sea. The victory feels unreal, almost fragile. Admiral Raymond Spruance does not celebrate. He understands what has happened, but he also understands what remains ahead. Midway has not ended the war. Japan still controls vast territory. The Pacific remains enormous, hostile, and deadly. Yet something fundamental has changed. For the first time, American commanders now truly believe, that Japan can be defeated at sea. News of the battle spreads rapidly. Within days, Washington understands the scale of what has occurred. Morale surges. The psychological wound of Pearl Harbor begins, finally, to close. Across the Pacific, Japan faces a harsh new reality. From this point forward, the Japanese Navy will fight defensively. Its strategy shifts from expansion to survival. Every operation becomes more cautious. Every loss more painful. The confidence that once defined Japanese naval planning is gone. Midway has drawn an invisible line in the ocean. On one side lies Japan's rise. On the other, its long, grinding decline. And the war is far from over. In the weeks after Midway, the Pacific Ocean looks the same on a map, but in reality, it has been transformed. Quietly, almost invisibly, the balance of power has shifted. Before June 1942, the Japanese Navy dictated the pace of the war. It chose when and where to strike. American forces reacted, improvised, and absorbed blows. After Midway, that dynamic begins to reverse. The change is not immediate, and it is not dramatic, but it is irreversible. In Tokyo, naval planners study reports from the battle with growing alarm. The loss of Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu is catastrophic, but the deeper problem is harder to quantify. Japan has lost a generation of carrier aviators, men trained through years of intense selection and combat experience in China and the early Pacific campaigns. These pilots cannot be replaced quickly. Japan's training system prioritizes quality over quantity. It produces excellent airmen, but far too slowly for a prolonged war of attrition. By contrast, the United States is only just beginning to mobilize its industrial and human potential. Aircraft factories expand. Pilot training programs multiply. New carriers are already under construction. Midway does not end Japan's ability to fight, but it ends its ability to dominate. American intelligence officers recognize this almost immediately. Analysts in Pearl Harbor and Washington pore over intercepted Japanese communications. The picture becomes clear. Japan is now reacting to events rather than shaping them. And reaction is a dangerous position in a global war. For the men who fought at Midway, the consequences are deeply personal. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, whose doomed torpedo squadron helped draw Japanese fighters away from the dive bombers, does not live to see the victory he helped secure. Many pilots who survived the battle return home quietly, their heroism known only to fellow servicemen. There are no grand parades. The war demands forward motion. Within months, American strategy pivots. In August 1942, U.S. Marines land on Guadalcanal. It is the first major American offensive of the war in the Pacific, and it would not have been possible without Midway. Japanese carrier strength is weakened. Their ability to contest American landings is limited. The initiative cautiously passes to the Allies. Yet Midway's influence goes beyond strategy and territory. It changes how the war is fought. Naval doctrine evolves rapidly. Commanders on both sides now understand that aircraft carriers, not battleships, are the true capital ships of modern warfare. Detection, timing, and intelligence become as important as firepower. A single mistake, a delayed launch, or a misread signal can decide the fate of fleets. Midway becomes a case study taught in war colleges for generations. It is studied not just for its outcome, but for its near failures. Had Japanese scouts found the American carriers earlier, had Nagumo launched immediately instead of rearming, had American dive bombers arrived minutes later, history could have taken a different path. But war does not reward hypotheticals. It rewards decisions made under pressure. And at Midway, American commanders, imperfect, exhausted, and uncertain, made just enough of the right decisions at the right moments. As the months turn into years, Japan's losses compound. Each carrier sunk afterward hurts more than the last. Each veteran pilot killed is harder to replace. By 1944, the once feared Japanese naval air arm is a shadow of its former self. The United States, meanwhile, grows stronger with each passing month. New carriers arrive in waves. Air groups rotate, train, and improve. Experience spreads rather than disappears. What began as survival becomes momentum. Looking back, historians will argue over which battle truly decided the Pacific War. Some point to Guadalcanal, others to Leyte Gulf. But all agree on one thing. Without Midway, none of them happened the same way. Midway is not the end of the story, but it is the moment the story changes direction. June 1942 fades into history, but the meaning of Midway only grows clearer with time. For the United States, this was never just a naval engagement. It was a test of survival, of learning speed, and of whether a nation still reeling from Pearl Harbor could adapt fast enough to stop a seemingly unstoppable enemy. At Midway, the U.S. Navy fought with fewer ships, fewer planes, and far less experience than its opponent. What it possessed instead was something less visible, but ultimately decisive: information, adaptability, and calculated risk. The American victory did not come from flawless execution. It came from commanders willing to act without certainty, from pilots who launched knowing they might not return, from intelligence officers who trusted broken fragments of intercepted messages enough to stake fleets on them. Had Midway been lost, the consequences would have been severe. Japan would have controlled the Central Pacific. Hawaii itself would have been under direct threat. American supply lines to Australia could have been severed. Any future offensive would have been delayed, perhaps by years. In a global war already stretching resources thin, time was the one thing the United States could not afford to lose. Midway bought that time. It bought breathing room. It bought confidence. It bought the chance to turn industrial power into strategic dominance. For Japan, the loss was more than material. It was philosophical. The belief in invincibility, carefully built since the victories of 1941, shattered in a single morning. From then on, every operation carried doubt. Every battle was fought with the knowledge that defeat was possible. That psychological shift mattered. Wars are not decided by numbers alone. They are decided by belief, by whether commanders think victory is inevitable or fragile. After Midway, American belief grew stronger. Japanese belief did not. Today, Midway stands as a reminder of how narrow the margins of history can be. A scout plane launched minutes late. A decision delayed by hesitation. A group of dive bombers arriving at exactly the wrong or right moment. Change any one of those, and the outcome might have been different. But history is not built on what might have happened. It is built on moments when everything hangs in the balance, and someone acts. At Midway, the United States acted, and by doing so, it ensured that the Pacific War would not be decided in Japan's favor, but fought step by brutal step, all the way to its end. Subscribe for more World War stories. And hit the like button for motivational. You're one click on subscribe, and give me motivation. Thanks.